ma.gov. And forgot to turn my cell phone off. Ah, there. Okay. I'm looking at the agenda, and I want to thank Mira. She dutifully put together all three of the minutes for all three of our last meetings. So I'd like to quickly go through those minutes if we could. The first minutes for the most prior meeting was for February 6th, 2025. And we were all present for that meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of?
I'll make that motion. This is Kate.
That's Kate.
Yep.
Do I have a second to approve the minutes of February 6th? Well, I'll do Paul. Kate and Paul.
May I ask a question?
Sure,
Regarding the
Troy.
minutes?
Any discussion?
Paragraph 4A.
4A.
Elementary school budget is currently up 6.16%. Does that still hold?
We're going to be discussing that as we get into the budget recap.
Yeah.
It is not, that's not the case right now.
Okay,
But at the time it was written, it was the case,
Yes,
so
right,
the minutes
right.
are accurate, just for
Correct.
clarification.
Yep.
Okay,
So I have a motion to approve the minutes as presented by Kate and seconded by Paul. Is there any further discussion on the minutes of February 6th? All in favor of the minutes of February 6th? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Zoomers, 6, 7 here. That's 7-0. The only person, we were all present, so that's no problem. The minutes of February 13th are next. And see, Paul, you were absent, Kate, you were absent.
correct.
Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of February 13th?
I move approval.
That's Roy,
Yes.
and Ron is second.
Sure.
Is there any further discussion on the minutes of February 13th? All in favor of the minutes of February 13th? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7-0. And you see, no, wait a minute, wait just a minute.
Mary,
No,
just.
I can't count Paul, and I can't count.
You can't count me. I
count
think I
you.
should be abstaining
Right, I
because
can't
I
count
wasn't
Paul, and I
there.
can't count you, so it's 1, 2,
Okay.
3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, right. Yes. Right, 5-0, 5-0,
Sorry.
5-0, 2. And thank you, everybody. And on to the last of the minutes of February 20th.
I'll
And
make the
Ron, you were
motion.
absent
I'll
for
make the motion
February
they be
20th.
approved.
I'm sorry,
I'll
Kate?
make the motion they be approved. Yep.
Kate makes a motion to approve the minutes of February 2nd. Do I have a second on the February?
Second.
Roy, is there any further discussion on the minutes of February 20th? All in favor of the minutes, and Ron, you were not present. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6-0. Thanks, everybody.
Mhm.
And thank you, Mira, for doing them all. And I'm now back to the agenda. And we have the budget recap first. You want to do the budget recap and then do the community preservation?
So Devin, if you are hearing, if you could put up on the screen just for reference, especially if someone's watching the operating budget table with all the numbers in it. And if you all receive this on email, so wait till Devin brings that up. But while that's coming up, you've gone through, you've done great work. You had some late sessions. You've met with all the departments. And so your review of the municipal side of the budget is pretty much complete. Of course, you have some time left if you want to revisit or discuss anything further. But I thought once you've done and talked to all the departments, kind of appropriate to recap where we are before we start moving on to other items that are in the warrant. And so this budget in front of you reflects everything that you reviewed with a couple of exceptions on line that I'll point out now, just so you have them. Line 26, dispatching salary. I've increased $20,000. Not quite the amount that the police chief wanted for additional overtime because of losing that grant, but I think we can manage that amount. And then secondly, line 35, natural resources expense, added $10,000 from an otherwise level funded budget originally. And that's to account for some costs that when we transferred from the police to DPW, that we didn't account for in that transfer. So that's a contract with the Animal Rescue League for housing of stray pets. And it's a contract for shorebird monitoring. Other than that, other changes since we started this process, I would go to line on the municipal side anyway, line 54 and or 55, I should say. No, 54. Exempt debt. I had anticipated that we would be borrowing from the USDA the balance of our water project. And it's become clear over the recent months that that's not happening. So we won't be doing a borrowing for, I think I pegged it at about $12 million. But I do anticipate having to borrow some money to cover the water fund by the end of the year. I think it's 2.5 million. And I'm anticipating that to be a short-term bond issue until we can figure out the long-term financing for the final step of the water. So we removed 600,000 of debt service and added, I think it was 100 and something thousand. Like, sorry, I have the number, but significantly reduced from what we originally proposed because it's just not happening. So I don't want to raise the money if I'm certain that's not happening. So didn't seem like a right thing to do. So obviously, so that's a reduction. And then finally, to the question that Roy started to ask, just up above under educational services, I haven't personally spent a lot of time educational services yet. That's next week's work, and I have sent a request to the Cape Tech and the Nauset School District to be present at the I think it's March 13th Finance Committee meeting for school budget presentations. They should have their budgets finalized. Cape Tech pretty much is finalized. And Cape Tech has had a reduction from what I provided. So that line 53 previously was a 3% increase, more or less. And the actual number came in a lot better, and it's actually ended up being a reduction. On the East Ham Elementary School, I had a update meeting with the principal, and we talked about some issues, and I'm not sure if this is where they finally landed, but that's what I'll clarify next week. But the worst case from where he thought they would end up is this 4,611,000 that I have reported, which is a more increase than I had provided for. But since we had some savings in other areas, we were able to accommodate that. And then the final thing, which we're waiting on, which I understand they've had maybe have some results, but I don't know that we have the actual assessment letters yet. But that's what I'll be tracking down next week is what's going to be the impact of the Nauset School District budget. So at the moment, the budget's balanced and it's balanced within our levy limit, but we'll have to see what comes with the Nauset assessment. Devin, if you could, we'll probably have to come back to this page, but could you go to the next page, please? Put it on the screen. While he's doing that, I would say we also have so this is the operating budget. We've talked about the capital budget way back in the early winter, late fall. That has not changed. So maybe some minor tweaks, but it's very substantially the same as what it has. And so we are putting together a draft of the warrant for the select board on Monday. In that will be the proposed capital budget. And we can review that again at another meeting if you'd like. but no changes really from what we had been talking about. And then also there's other budget items, which will be Article 4, and you'll see that in the draft of the warrant that will be distributed Monday to the select board. Those other budget items are pretty much everything we had talked about. The biggest being transfers to stabilization funds and wastewater stabilization in our reserve accounts. $250,000 for housing programs. Our IT application development allotment. The biggest change from that we haven't really talked about, but the select board and the finance committee will have to talk about, is I did put in under the other budget items, $200,000 of free cash for implementation of the residential tax exemption. And so that I'm sure will be a discussion with the select board. And that's to cover additional costs related to a 5% residential tax exemption. Let's assume that's all the money we have. So
I was saying 5% is what you're talking about right now?
I'm not saying that's what they're going to do. I'm saying that's the amount of
what
money,
you Put the money in.
the amount of money we have
Okay,
covers a
okay,
5%
okay,
exemption.
Okay.
If they choose to do something else, and this is why we'll have to have a discussion with the select board and the finance committee, we're allowed to, it's not enough town meeting appropriation. We're allowed to spend it down, the overlay, and we're allowed to even go into deficit if that were to happen. It's just that eats into our general fund balance reserve. And so, just easy math. If you double it and a 5% is 200,000, a 10% is be 400,000. So if I only provide for 200 and town meeting approves that, we'd be eating into our fund balance by, whatever amount more, 200,000 or more. So, and that takes us a lot of time that takes us some years to accumulate to get to that point. So, I do want to make sure that I make that point and that you guys understand that as well. So that kind of rounds up the budget items. The impact of all of this is what's on the screen now, and this is our tax levy projection. And one more thing before I get into that, the other side of the budget process is lining up all our funding sources. So obviously property taxes has to fall in line, which is on the screen. But the other piece of it that has to fall in line is our local receipts. I had to make an adjustment to local receipts downward. And if I have the opportunity or the flexibility, I would like to adjust them downward even further, because unfortunately, our 20-year lease agreement with cell phone companies is expiring. And I thought that would be an opportunity to get a little bit more money. Well, apparently the market's totally turned around in the past 20 years. And I've had to do some research with other towns who had recent experience. And what they're finding is they're cutting less money. And I'm fearful that our less is going to be order of magnitude of maybe 50% less of what we're getting. And we were getting about $350,000 a year. So I was only able to cut out, I think, about $30,000 or $40,000 of that local receipt. So if we're 50% less, we will be short on that line item. But we'll be able to make it up within our other local receipts. But going into the following fiscal year, the Department of Revenue won't let us do that again. So all that being said, is if you look at this page, property taxes balances out all of the funding needed to balance the budget. And you can see when you look in the middle of the page there, we have made it by $646. And this is pending the assessment from Nauset. So if the assessment from Nauset comes in more than the 3% that's been provided, we'll have some decisions that we'll have to be talking about. And then for sake of argument, let's say everything comes in the way we have it presented here. The result of this is a tax rate of $7.63, which is an average burden of about $6,600 or a median burden of $5,728, about $110 to $120 increase, which is under 2%. So not too bad.
Better than last year for sure.
But, last year was a big one because significant ads for the high school debt, significant ad on water debt. And what else am I missing? There's something else. Oh, the override of the school and the school and the police.
Right. The $1,020,000.
It's a
So
nice
this is-
talking, oh, sorry, Rich. I was gonna say, it's a nice talking point, assuming this all works out as you were just describing, fingers crossed. It's a nice talking point to be able to say that the rate is nudging down a little bit.
Yeah. And Devin, if you could close this screen now and maybe bring up the other one. I guess to that point, Ron, I guess the talking point, we promised town meeting 3 years ago or 2 years ago, whenever I kind of forget the timing of it all, that, hey, we're trying to minimize overrides and we want to do, we should be prepared to be doing one
Come, put them together,
every third year.
right?
And I've been talking to the schools to try to get them on the same schedule. So that'll take some time. So this is the third year of the municipal side of the budget where we've met our promise. In this past 3 years, there has not been an override, a general override for the town. There's been an override because we wanted to add something for police officers, right? And there's been an override because of the schools. But, we've honored our promise of, you gave us an override for these salaries, it's contract settlements 3 years ago. We won't hit you up again, and we haven't. So, so my planning of how much money we would need, so it looks like I was pretty much right on the money by, $1,000 or so. But, so at least we said what we wanted to do, and hopefully we follow through on that. And, nobody ever likes taxes going up, but I think, at least we're trying to be transparent and let people know what to expect. And I asked Devin to put this back up just in case anybody had any questions on any of these line items or want to have a quick discussion about any of them.
I have a couple of questions. Peter and I attended the most recent budget meeting for the school system earlier this week, and it's my understanding as a result of a question that I asked and a discussion that occurred there that they're going to be proceeding with the statutory calculation versus the alternative. That last year that caused us to be increased by about $51,000 versus the alternative.
Yeah.
What have you used in here?
Nothing.
No, oh, okay.
I just went up 3%.
Oh, they just the 3%. Okay.
Previous one was statutory. So
Right.
theoretically you want-
But, so what we'll have to do every year, and, this is, I don't want to get off sidelined in a whole discussion on the regional
No,
agreement,
no,
and
no.
you guys even started your meetings, but, I'm a big fan of the regional agreement formula. I know it's a little bit more work for the schools, but I just think it's the way to go. But, in the environment we're in at the moment, chances are we're going to be doing the statutory. And what we'll see is every year we'll make out, and every other year, some years we'll make out and some years it will hurt us. And we won't know the way it's going to go because Chapter 70 funding changes every year
Yeah,
too.
right.
So in our demographics that drives the Chapter 70 funding formula changes all the time too. So some years will be a winner of the statutory formula, some years will be a loser. And we'll measure it each year just so we know, and we can kind of keep track over time, the plus and the minus of it.
There's a Brewster Finance.
Peter, could you speak into a microphone? There you go. Thank you.
Finance Committee member that attends all the meetings, also the finance committee. He's an accountant, and he figures that this year with the statutory method, last year, if you remember, Brewster, we went up 51,000 over alternative, but Brewster went down about the same amount. This year, Brewster's going to pay 31,000 more if they use the statutory, which I think they will. So to your point, it bounces around.
Right.
We didn't hear you, Peter.
We can't hear you, Peter. I don't know if your microphone is maybe not on.
It's on, it needs to be closer to his, when he speaks.
I was just reinforcing Rich's point about the lumpiness of the assessments with the statutory. Brewster went down. Brewster was 51,000 under what with the statutory method last year, what they would have been with the alternative. And this year, they're going to be about 31,000 more with the statutory. So it does bounce around. But maybe some of that can be evened out with the 3-year rolling average. Into the
Well, the 3-year rolling average would even that out, but that would require you to use the regional school agreement method, the alternative method. Because the statutory method is statutory.
You can't averages.
Right.
Mary, I have one question.
Is that Jerry? Jerry, go
yes,
ahead.
a little bit off target here. Rich, did you and Peter have the meeting with the school, Nauset Regional Schools, to discuss the number of students in each section of every class in the high school?
So Jerry, you might remember, I think you were there at the budget forum that they held at the high school.
Yeah,
They said that they are working on almost like a position control type of report that would align it to the classes that are being held and the kids in those classes. So I tried to have a meeting this week with them, but it didn't work out because they were away on school vacation week. But I'm trying to set up a meeting next week to follow up on that to see if they have that. And then I also have a couple other issues to talk to them about on their budget and some of the things that we will have to be doing as far as assessing them costs from the town as well. So that's next week's work, Jerry. Hopefully I'll have a better answer for you
All right.
next week.
thank you.
I have another question, Rich, and it's back to the police and the overtime. And I'm looking at the fact that in 2023, the actual figure for overtime was $270,000, and we had a in fiscal year 24, we had you see that's what an actual. Let me see, of $328,000. That was before they've hired the most recent 3 members, and they're hopefully planning to have another 4th, hopefully by the end of this fiscal year. Do you have the actual overtime for year to date?
I do, not off the top of my head.
Okay.
We do stay on top of it, both the chief and myself, and he's on track. We're not anticipating going over. Why it goes up or why it's high, I mean, there's always going to be some amount of overtime
Right,
generated
right.
from time off and vacations, but the high year was a result of having, and I've talked to the chief so many times about this now, I kind of forget the details, but we had several people out in that year. And we also had somebody injured on duty. And so when you're understaffed and you have people out on injured on duty,
Overtime.
that's what drives overtime more than the scheduled vacation type stuff. So we're owning a little bit of risk in that line item by not going up, even though we've added officers. But on the other side, perhaps, if we have somebody injured on duty or somebody out, the extra officers gives us the opportunity not to have to backfill a shift because it's already staffed at a level higher than it had been. So if the things happen, so you probably chief's probably not going to do that in the middle of summer.
Mhm.
But if he has an opportunity to drop down to the old staffing level in, the middle of January, a midnight shift in January or February, he probably will take advantage of that to keep that savings and manage his overtime budget. This is why we didn't go up.
My concern is that since we had the override last year of 300,000 in order to increase the number of policemen, and they're now hoping to have 4 by the end of this fiscal year, wouldn't most people want to know, or not want to know, but would consider or think that the overtime should decrease with 4 more people for next year, and we're showing the same amount that we've shown for the last 2 years?
I wouldn't think it would decrease with more people.
I think the chief was pretty clear on that when he asked for the extra officers, that it would not necessarily affect the overtime.
No. If anything, I think it would go up, but honestly, but that's not what keeps us up at night or worried about things. What makes us worried is the injured on duty status of people. Because those are usually long-term situations that require filling of shifts on a long-term basis. Our level of overtime is sufficient to handle the routine vacation schedules and time off schedules. And again, with the extra officer, in the middle of winter on a midnight, the chief might elect not to fill. He might go back to the old level of staffing because he can in that environment. Whereas in the summer, probably can't.
Mhm.
A lot of times when you see savings and overtime, you see it on in the public safety, it's on the fire department side because they have what's called a concurrent call issue.
Yeah.
So I've done this in several towns where I've done studies where if you just had an extra 2 people on a shift, you would eliminate a certain number of instances of fire department callbacks to fill station coverage for those times that you have 2 or 3 calls at the same time.
Mhm.
And so by having the extra staffing, you don't have to do the callback in those concurrent situations, and you can calculate what that savings is.
Mhm.
The police are a little bit different because they're fixed level of staffing and they don't have the concurrent call issue or they're having callback or anything like that, unless it's some major incident, but we don't budget for major incidents. That's why we have a reserve fund.
Kate, do you have a question?
Yeah, it's just, I think, would it be fair to say, just for the purposes of understanding for any people that might be watching out there, that overtime can be calculated. It's the unanticipated people being absent from their roles due to injury or emergency that drives unanticipated overtime. Is that
Exactly.
pretty fair to say?
Yep.
Okay. And that's something you don't have a crystal ball on your desk yet.
Right. Well, I do, but it doesn't work that way.
Okay.
It's no globe.
Are there any other questions from the folks that are on Zoom?
I have a question, Mary. or
Roy?
two questions, yes. I know when we talked with the police chief, he's moving ahead with body cameras, and is that going to be from a grant?
It is, and he has, and they're in-house and will be in operation by the summer.
Okay, second question is, which looks to be good news to me, town debt service is decreasing. And what is the reason for that? What are we paying off that its debt services cost is reducing?
Just double check the line here.
It was originally shown as 9,136,363, and we're now showing it as 8,590,868.
So on the exempt debt, the 278,000 decrease, we are paying off old, our first tranche of water loans and, I'd have to get the whole debt schedule to tell you exactly. And actually, if you give me a minute, I'll borrow Peter's book and I can go through and tell you exactly. But there is under the debt service page in your budget books, there is a list of every individual bond and the debt
Mhm.
service associated with it. And
Right.
it compares this year, the 26 year to last year. So I'll take a look at that in a second and maybe I can revisit that. But it's basically we're paying off some loans, some water, old water, and I'm not sure if it's a library. Library, I think it might be next year.
I think it was originally 20 years, and that probably would have been 2016, like that.
Oh,
maybe.
really? Right. Or not the
Yeah, like
library,
2000
elementary school. That's what I
oh,
meant to say.
oh, oh.
So I'll have to,
Yeah, the elementary school would have been before the library.
I'll get you the page numbers in a second and I'll get back to that, Roy.
Okay, thank you. Well, I can find it in my budget book.
Peter, can I just see that for a quick second?
Mary, you've got a hand up.
Oh, Jerry, thanks, Kate.
Mhm.
Yeah, one question, thanks, Mary. One question for Rich. In the street lighting budget, I know this is little peanuts here. We had agreed to put in LEDs and those were done. And I would have expected to see a reduction rather than flat across.
Yeah, I don't know that I've seen a big reduction. Maybe there was a reduction, but then the rate increased, Jerry.
Yeah, okay. Thanks.
You save a little and you add a little.
So page 199 of your budget books. And I wish now I didn't print this so darn small because I can't really read it. But maybe if I,
199, did you say, Rich?
I'll zoom in with my camera here. The library bond went down, the very first line item. Ooh, yeah,
It used to be around 220,000 or so.
One went down from, one of the water bonds went down from 494 to 404.
Rich, do you have the general ledger code beside each one?
Yeah. And the big one, I found it here, was the Salt Pond Watershed Protection Bond. Just about $230,000 last year, and it's been paid off. It's zero this year. So
Okay,
page
thank you.
199 and page 200 would be the relevant pages to be looking at.
And it looks like it's 01702 for Salt Pond.
Thanks, Rich.
Thanks, Peter.
Do I have any other questions on the budget, budget recap that we're discussing at the moment? Do you have any other comments that you'd
No,
like to make? or-
Think we're hitting the home stretch. Next week, we'll deal with the schools and hopefully get some final answers. And then we'll, on your schedule, maybe by at the end of the meeting, Mary, we can just talk about what's coming up for future meetings to make sure we cover all the articles and the school stuff.
And I think we're scheduled to discuss the school budgets on March 13th.
Yes.
That's still, that has not changed.
I've reached out to them to confirm that date,
Mhm.
and hopefully I'll know
Yeah.
by next
okay.
week.
Let me see. I was just looking at the worksheet that you put together on the wastewater, and Rich and I were talking about the situation where the intended use plan was giving saying that they're capping that at $50 million and eliminating any carryover. And so that is going to be something that's going to affect us in some fashion as we go forward. That is information that we didn't have when all of this was put together.
Right. Well, and I said earlier that the capital budget hasn't changed much. Actually, that was a misstatement because it has changed significantly.
Mhm.
Everything's exactly the same except for one item, the biggest item,
The
the
wastewater.
$160 million of wastewater
Right.
is at the moment not likely to be on the warrant. We'll talk with the select board about it on Monday because of the situation with the SRF program. Honestly, it feels like kind of a rug pull. And actually, I had a meeting today with some state officials talking about environmental bond bill, which might be a mechanism to get back on track. But the long and the short of it is that all the communities on the Cape have been working with the DEP for a number of years to establish a regulatory framework for cleaning up nitrogen. And we all got on board and signed on board for what we got the 5 year, we got the, regulations that we have to all do IA systems, but we got 5 years to do that if we come up with a watershed management plan. And we all knew that and all signed on to that on the premise that SRF was going to fund our projects. And now it's not. And so we've made that clear to the state and they hear that. And there's a lot of political pressure or feedback being received in the last couple of weeks. So I think things are likely to change. I don't know what it looks like yet, But I think what Jackie and I are likely going to be recommending is let's move forward without it now. It's kind of hard to have on a town meeting when we have uncertainty of how to pay for it. It does give us an opportunity to get the word out to the community a little bit more about what we're doing. But we ought to be prepared for a special town meeting if things change significantly enough that allow us to move forward. This might still be our last best chance to secure some funding under the terms that we've been contemplating. So I think that's probably going to be the approach that we're going to recommend.
So you're saying that that's going to be on the agenda for, is it, I know you just had a select board meeting. Is it, do you have another one next Monday? Is that?
Yes,
That's the,
we'll be reviewing the warrant. And so we have several items listed in the warrant that they'll, get a first glimpse at.
mhm.
And then I'm sure we'll talk about some things that aren't in the warrant that maybe they want to consider, or how would they like to approach it.
So that's March 3rd. March 3rd.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions from the folks Zooming at the moment? Okay. So if that's the case, I'm going to go on to the next part of our agenda. And that's the Community Preservation Committee. And I hope everybody got a chance to look at the draft of the articles that will be on the in the warrant, I should say.
Yeah, so Paul Lag in the Community Development Department and Stacy Wadey is the CPA admin. Meet with the CPC and present all the applications for projects and work with them on the articles, and then the CPC provides recommendations on each of them. Article A is their annual reserves are required to set aside 10% minimum for each of the required areas. And it requires us to go through a revenue estimation process. So we're estimating the revenues for the upcoming year to be 1,266,000. So 10% of that, which is the minimum requirement we're required to appropriate, is 126,000 for each of the areas, except for housing. You did a little bit more, which I'll ask about in a second. 5% for the CPA administration, which is the max for that. And the balance of the 1,226,000 going into a budget reserve, so to speak. But Mary, since you were on that committee,
Yeah,
can you
sure.
talk to the finance committee about the rationale on the amount of the housing
Right.
versus something else?
The Massachusetts general laws require 10% for the 4 items, 4 categories: open space, historic preservation, community housing, and active recreation that we have. We've just completed this past year a 5-year update for our community preservation plan. And as a result of that update, the change was made to leave it at 10% for open space, 10% for historic preservation, and it was changed from 10% to 30% for the community housing, given the fact that everybody felt that we do have a housing crisis. And so you'll see on the draft, the 379,000, which represents 30% of the reserve that we feel is estimated, the 1,266,167. And we did not change the active recreation from the earlier 10 to 10. And then, as Rich said, 5% for administration, and the rest is for the other. It's 35. It ends up to be about 35%.
Mary, was there any, I think you heard Senator Sear the other night say that put as much as possible of the housing in the housing reserve. Was there any discussion of doing something more than 30%?
No, there was not. It was left at 30%.
Okay.
Well, there was maybe a question of 40%, but the vote was for 30%, which is the 379,850 on our draft. Does anybody have any questions on the reserve, the appropriations as outlined in Article, well, it's A. We don't have an article number yet, but it's the Article A on the draft.
Mary,
Yes, Roy.
That amount for community housing. If we got something going on the Tea Time property, or the, other property we own, housing development, could this money be used toward that?
The community housing money, yes.
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
And I just want to add that, let me see, I just want to pull up something. If we don't use all the monies from year to year, as required under the either the 10%, which we used to have, or the current 30%, it's kept in the housing reserve. And right now we have, under the affordable or community housing monies left over from all prior years that we haven't used, we currently have $437,655 in that account. That's not including the monies that we're just looking at now, the 379.
Mhm.
So that would give us, that's close to about 800,000 that would be available, and that's what we're trying to do. Last year, we put in 400,000 directly into the housing reserve, which is why it's showing as 437 right now. And that's why we increased the 10 to the 30% for the ongoing. So as I say, that if you add the 379 or 380 and the 437, you've got a little over 800,000 that's in there to be used for something that might come along. That's not including any monies that the Affordable Housing Trust have. They have monies as well. That's nothing to do with these monies.
Thank you.
Mary, it's Jerry.
Yes,
Roy, the numbers they showed were 10, 10, 10, and 30, which makes 60%. 60%. There's also 40% that goes into the general fund, and the CPC can vote to use that for any of those four purposes. So all of that could even be used if it comes up for affordable housing. But with vote of the CPC and also with approval of the town in a town meeting.
Mhm. Thank you.
Jerry, is that a vote that's taken at the town meeting, or is that something that is the select board or a committee decision?
The initial vote, this 10, 10, 10, 30, that is, that's a vote that the town makes at the town meeting.
Okay,
And the CPC will also bring forward to the town specific projects that will get voted on in the article. I think, and Mary, you can correct me, at times like for Nauset Green, we were able to at the end, right near the end when it was ready to go, able to move from affordable housing. It might have been from the Affordable Housing Trust money, like $120,000 or something for them right at the end when they were just about ready to close.
I was not on the committee at that time, but and a number of towns did provide 100,000, like we provided various other communities doing similar type of work. And you are correct, based on what I understand, as I say, I wasn't on the committee at that time.
I was.
That monies were
Kate
used.
from the Housing Trust, Kate, the only, town meeting is the only body that has authorization to, spend, CPA money.
Yeah, so all CPA projects will go through town meeting. Housing trust money, not necessarily.
okay. Thank you.
Are there any other questions on the first article under the appropriation that we're discussing the percentages regarding the reserves?
A minor point of order, Mary, so the first three are actually required by statute, minimum of 10%.
Right.
Active rec was something that
We
East
added.
Dam voted on, and we added that
Right.
extra. an East town meeting could change their mind on that, but the other three are part of state law.
Mhm.
Okay.
And the state law is 10%, 10%, 10%. You have to have 10% on those minimum.
All right, I'll go to
Yep.
item B then.
Yep, yep.
Item B is a housing project, 580 Massasoit Road, which is the COA thrift, known as the COA thrift shop. That was acquired with housing, CPA housing money, a couple years ago, I think, as a historic preservation project. So funded out of historic, because of the storefront and its historic use as of its use. And it was restored on the, I'm gonna get this right, on the exterior for the first floor. But that work, and so it's been restored for the historic purposes, but now but it's not been fully restored. In other words, there's a second and third floor. And those are both conducive to having apartments in them. And so this request is to finish the work, completely renovate the building and utilize the second and third floor for housing. And therefore, the request is through the housing allocation of CPC. And I know they've had quite a bit of discussion on this one, but I see Paul's got his hand up.
And it may be what you all have talked about. Two questions. One, if the money's approved, when would the units be available for rent? Do we know?
When would the apartments be available for rent?
Yep.
Well, we've got the design work is done, and I think we asked for some modifications but by the time this happens and takes effect, I think the design work will be done and we'll be ready to go. Then it's just a scheduling of the work. There's quite a bit of work to do. It's, $800 or $760,000 worth of work. So it's not a small project. So, I would imagine upwards of a year. And
Okay.
we've arranged for the COA shop because they'll have to move. So we've been talking to them and relocate them to Town Center Plaza in the interim time period, so that it's a free building to get all the work done as quick as possible.
All right, thanks. And then a slightly unfair question. Any idea of what the units will rent for? I'm just trying to figure out the payback time for the $760,000.
The top apartment is on the third floor is a studio apartment. And the apartment on the second floor is a 1-bedroom apartment.
Okay.
And by the time we get to
Yeah, and I don't know what the
Rental part.
rents will be, but also have to keep in mind, since these are CPA funds, the rentals are restricted to people with no more than 100% of the area
Okay.
median income.
yeah.
So there'll be
Okay.
some sort of subsidy associated with it. But we do currently own, we have a rental revolving fund. We own several properties that we have a rental program. And the money goes into that rental revolving fund. And it's, we keep track of it by property, but it is all one fund. So it's kind of fungible in that sense. So these 2 units would be added into that rental revolving fund.
Okay, thanks. So the idea is I should think of it in terms of the town as subsidizing these places in order to provide affordable housing for folk.
Yeah, and on a macro level, one of the things I was considering when we were talking about this whole project, and I'm probably even short now in saying this, as changes day to day, but the cost of developing a unit of affordable housing is north of $500,000.
Right.
And so for my frame of reference, for 760, that's not too bad of a deal. We're getting 2 units for less than 500 each.
Okay.
Can we put 800 into it?
Yeah, for the historic part.
Well, the other thing is, and this is just from my perspective, that the 760 is only been determined as of actually this month. So there's no contingency in there past current time. So we know what the cost of this town hall cost. We know what we've gone through with the high school. So I think that's got to be taken into account.
Well, I think your point's well taken, but and we just can't discount every, designers and builders' estimates. I mean, we got to go with something. If you want to say that, then I guess we should have asked you for $1 million, and nobody would like that either. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, I think we go with the best information we have, and we hopefully manage the projects, make changes if we need to, and it didn't work out with the town hall for any number of reasons. Worked out pretty well with the water project, so. You win some, you lose some. Didn't work out all for the Harbor Master building. That didn't go the way we thought it would either, right?
Maybe the Affordable Housing Trust could.
Right.
The difference at the end. Like we did.
Exactly.
We can't hear anything that Peter is saying, unfortunately.
I'm sorry, Kate.
We can't hear anything that Peter is saying, unfortunately.
Put the microphone any closer, I don't think.
I think that microphone might be on the fritz.
Can you hear me when I talk?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
How about now? Huh, you-
Have to talk louder, Peter.
that's-
Use your outside dad voice.
I was gonna ask you, Rich, on the, when you establish the amount, the lease, the amount, is there, I know there's restrictions on the income levels for the applicants. Is there a calculation on what the rent has to be based on what people that make 100% of the area median income can afford?
Yeah.
30%, yeah.
And that's just getting there, at some point when we want to talk about the rental revolving fund, I'll have to have Rachel Butler come down and talk to you about those things. That's a whole different area. It's not really expertise in, but.
Are people comfortable voting on this? For the, these votes will be shown in the warrant.
Mhm.
Could we
Can I
not,
ask one more question?
another meeting?
How much is in the community preservation fund undesignated now?
You want to know how much is in the undesignated?
Correct.
Undesignated. As of 12/31/24, it's a little over $1 million.
Okay, thank you.
That's the undesignated.
Right.
That's taking into account everything else that we've got to pay for, projects that have already been accepted, and the monies that are in restricted funds
Right.
that I was mentioning earlier.
So then there'll be an additional 443 going in.
Yes.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay.
So Mayor, I'd suggest on the votes, I think what we've done a couple years is we've held off the recommendations till a later meeting. So you've seen
And
the,
do everything,
seen
we're going to hold off on the votes
Okay.
and do everything at one time. Are there any other questions on the 580 Massasoit Road housing project?
Nope.
Steve?
knows the
Steve,
answer to this.
you're on mute.
Yes, I should be off now.
Yeah,
Yep.
I can hear you,
Okay, all
but
right.
speak up so everybody
I
can.
will try. I don't know if anybody knows the answer to this, but for this kind of money, if it's used in different manner as far as assisting development in low-income housing, is it spread out further and it is more, it achieves more in different directions? It's a curious, I know everybody's been working on this a long time and stuff. But there are other ways to spend money where it's spread out into more housing units than two?
well, the building's only as big as it's going to be. There's no more
No,
room.
that's not my point. That's not my point. I'm just saying if it was used in a different type of a scenario, a development.
Well, that's what
type
we're
thing.
trying to do at tea time. When
Yeah.
we get around to developing tea time, if we say, for sake of argument, let's say we've got wastewater in place, so that's not an issue for the development. That if we have wastewater coming in, we have that infrastructure, then that's an attractive parcel for a developer. And usually what you do is you have a request for proposal or an RFP approach, where you put out an RFP to development community and say, this is the type of thing you're looking for. Give us your best proposals and give us a financing plan. And usually they'll come back with any number of options. You could do low-income housing tax credit, which is a federal tax subsidy to units. There's state money and state grants that'll subsidize things. You can come back to the town, ask for $1 million of CPA money, maybe some housing trust money. So the answer is it depends. There are lots of ways. But at the end of the day, and actually it was just a discussion I had with somebody at the library the other day on the open session we had. We can only do what someone's going to do. So you can have the best well-laid plans in the world and think you're going to do exactly X, Y, and Z. But if you don't get a developer to respond to that, you're probably not doing that. So you can only do what people are willing to do. And that depends on the capital stack and the various subsidies and levels of funding that exist in the state and federal government by and large. And the local government can subsidize some smaller amounts. We don't have millions of dollars, but we might have a million for a big project. So I guess the answer is, Steve, it depends.
Yeah.
Mary, this is
Yes.
Jerry. Steve, if I remember Nauset Green, and my numbers might be a little bit off, but the
I'm having
town,
trouble hearing you, Jerry.
all right, I'll try now. Can you hear me
Yeah,
better
that
now?
sounds better. Yeah, go ahead.
Steve, I don't remember exactly all the numbers at Nauset Green, but the town gave a 99-year lease free, and I don't know exactly what funds were used to purchase the Purcell property on which it's built. But the town gave some infrastructure money. There was some affordable housing money. There was CPA money that went in there. There was some money from Orleans CPA money from Wellfleet CPA money. Probably came up to 2 million or maybe $2.5 million. And that gave us 65 units or 62. I can't remember the exact. I get confused. Cape Cod 5 is 62 or
Yeah, it's
one-
65 at Village Green.
65 for Village Green. So yes, you can put money together if there's a large enough project as as Rick said, with a developer, and you can extend the money further than this. But here we have a building that we're doing, and also previously, the CPA funds, they were looking at some point to purchase single family homes and rent them out cheaper, and they found that was just too expensive per unit. So they look to do other things, and Nauset Green is one of the things comes out. But yeah, there are projects, and I think the idea on tea time, depending upon whatever happens with wastewater or anything, would be to combine with help a developer, public-private partnership kind of thing, and it would expand, would cost a lot less per unit than what we're doing on this Massasoit Road. But Massasoit Road, we have a single building, historical, and we're trying to do the best we can with it.
Yeah, bringing it back to the article that's there on the Massasoit Road. We've got a building that we own, and it's not optimized for its best and highest use, and that's really what we're trying to do. It doesn't make sense to have unoccupied second and third floor. And we want to take care of the building, finish the renovation of it, and use it for the way it can be used. So it's kind of the bottom line of it. But Steve, for everybody for that matter, the development cost of a unit is nowadays north of $500,000. I'm just going to use 500 because it's even in a project, big development project. So, a 20 unit project is going to be $10 million more, more or less project that's expensive. And so that's why low income housing tax credits through the federal government is a big deal, and other things through the MassWorks program through the state's a big deal. There's been talk through the Housing Trust of maybe buying individual units, as Jerry alluded to. So that might be an approach, but I think some more unconventional ways are probably better. And we're starting to talk about them and get some legislation that would support things like a deed restriction buyback program. So in other words, instead of buying the whole property, maybe someone has lived in their home for 50 years, let's say. They've been here for a long time and they're getting elderly. They don't want to leave their home and they could use some extra cash. And so I'll just make up a number. For $50,000, the town or the housing trust could give you some money to have a deed restriction. You still own the home. It's just that when you transfer the home in the future, it goes with that restriction that it has to be used for a year-round property or can't be rented out on a short-term basis, whatever the restriction says. So that's a cheaper way to get housing generated instead of buying a capital intensive program up front. That's been successful in a lot of places out west.
Yeah, out in Vale, I think.
This is one other thing we should keep in mind, with CPA, it's allowable to, it's an allowable use of CPA funds to bond a project and pay the bond with the CPA revenue.
That's right.
Year after year. That's pretty powerful.
Are there any other questions or comments on the 580 Massasoit Road project? I'm going to go on to the next article. It's called Cape Housing Institute. And the town has been involved with that institute for maybe 4, 5, 6 years. I've attended a number of the programs. Essentially, it's for the funding of the programs that they do have, including, I think there are about 8 towns that are also funding this institute. Provincetown, Truro, Wellfleet, Eastham, Orleans, Harwich, Brewster, etc. Some of you might have attended some of those programs in the past. Do you have any questions on the appropriation requested of $10,000 for this institute? Okay. I'm going to go on to the next article. It's the Eastham Elementary School playground upgrade. This is the second year that they've requested monies. This is being called Phase 2. Phase 1 was last year. It was about $55,000. The monies that they requested last year was more for upgrades and fixing of the equipment that was in need of repair. This year, the monies are being asked for a particular piece of equipment for the playground area. This playground area is used by the school for obviously for their children that are there. It's used for the after-school program. It's used in the summer for the recreation, by the recreation department. Obviously, visitors and families in the town can use the playground as well at any time. Are there any questions regarding the request for the $55,000? As I say, this is for a particular piece of equipment for the playground area.
Mary,
Yeah.
I think what's going to come up at town meeting is what is the piece of equipment?
Yeah, I have the name of it. It's a whirligig type of, that term probably doesn't describe exactly what it looks like. It's one piece of equipment that the school feels would be adding to the playground equipment that they currently have.
I agree with Kate, maybe we should put that in the summary.
Yeah, I'll get
What's this piece of
Yeah, I
equipment?
think people are going to want to know what they're buying.
I'll put down whirligig.
Yeah.
And I think a couple of parents would say, are there seat belts? Maybe we could even have somebody describe it.
Yeah, that can be added. It, as I said, it is a particular piece of equipment. It has a name, and I think it is called the whirligig. That's what I remember. I don't have all of my CPA documents with me right this minute.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions on the
Whirligig?
on the whirligig, right? Okay, I'm moving along, folks. Let me see.
Wiley Park.
The next one is Wiley Park. 11,000, and they want to put in 2 kiosks at 2 different locations at the park in order to provide additional information regarding the park itself and how it's being used, the rules, regulations, etc., associated with the area with Wiley Park. Are there any questions on the kiosks?
Nope.
So the description, the summary, it should say, I think it means to say bridge, this entrance near Bridge Pond in the Herring Run, not Bridge Road.
Mary, can you say what Peter said? Because it sounded like that was,
Peter is looking at the summary, and I'm looking at it myself. Where are you, Peter? Oh, Bridge Road,
It means Bridge Pond.
Bridge Pond, and the Herring, and
Herring
the Herring Run, Bridge
okay, I
Pond,
was going to ask where the trailheads, which trailheads they were. So,
Bridge Pond, and the Herring Run. It's part of the first sentence. Near the entrance,
mhm,
the Herringbrook entrance near Bridge Pond and the Herring Run.
okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm moving along. The historic property survey. And that's for 40,000. Again, the town has been doing this for a number of years. It's the houses 75 years or older. The information is maintained at the library, and I believe some of it's on the town website. I'm not exactly sure about that part, but it is available, and we've been paying for the surveys of specific homes, as I said, 75 years or older, to maintain the information about the preservation of the various structures in Eastham. This is not the first time we have done this.
Is it anywhere near the last time? They seem to keep coming.
They keep, because houses, the years change, so 75 years, yeah, that's right. Every year you get a year older.
Does that happen with people too, Mary?
Yeah, I just said that to Peter. It certainly is true for me. Any questions on the historic property survey?
No. Mm-mm.
Down to open space, 20 Deacon Payne. Again, this is $50,000 from our open space fund to purchase some land that's at 20 Deacon Payne Road, and it's part of a larger piece of land that is available for protection of freshwater ponds and wetlands.
Ah.
And actually, I think it's being, this isn't the total amount that's being used to pay for it. And I believe they've already bought it. I think I saw something in the paper the other day that they've already bought it, so.
So is this, I think it would be good in this particular one to elaborate, because what you just said about protection of wetlands and stuff like that, I think would appeal to people, to know what it's for. And it looks like it's 0.69 acres, so it's
Right,
just under,
Pretty small.
yeah.
small, yeah.
Mary, they should also probably include a map.
Map,
Yeah.
A map in the warrant, in the discussion, so people can see
yeah,
where it
people
is.
can see where it's located.
Where and what's surrounding. I mean, it's
Mhm.
also, it's connected to some other protective
Correct.
stuff, and that should show in the warrant, I think.
A great idea.
This is being done by the Eastham Conservation Fund. They're the ones that are putting up the rest of the monies.
Okay.
Let me see, I'm down to the last one. And this, it has to do with a project that well, 8 units have already been built in a number of years ago. We were not involved with that. And they're trying to add to, they have space, the land, and they're trying to add 8 more supportive 1-bedroom apartments where the folks that are going to be living there have assistance in the process of living in their apartments. Go ahead.
Is this the Cape Cod Village? The place in Orleans?
No,
this
it's
is
not in
Dennis.
Orleans. It's not in
It's
Orleans.
in Dennis. I can't think of the
Yeah.
name of it.
Down in, it's down in Dennis.
Might be good to put the name of.
Yeah.
Is it
Yeah.
connected with the folks in Orleans?
No, that's a totally different project.
Okay. All right. It's that Cape Cod Village, I think, right?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay.
So,
It definitely can hear me.
yeah. So the comments that I'm hearing are to be more specific regarding the location. Is that correct?
And if there's a collaboration with another group, another nonprofit,
Well, that's forward. That's
That's the name
the
for
name. That's what it stands for.
Friends of Relatives with Autism and Related Disabilities is a
Okay.
nonprofit.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
I'll work with Paul and
Whoa.
we'll clean this up and get a little bit more descriptive.
okay, great.
Do we know how many units are there now?
Yeah, 8. There are 8 there
No.
now.
There's more than that now.
No,
This is adding 8.
yeah, there are 8 now and going to 8 more.
All right, I thought it was more, but
No, I think it's 8. It's my understanding there are 8 now and they're adding 8.
Yeah, Mary, I think that we recommended funds for this in the past for the original group, so that we could. There was an autism program, maybe it was located in Orleans, but I think
That's the one
we
in
did-
Orleans. That's the one in Orleans, Jerry.
Orleans,
This is
okay.
a different one.
All right, sorry.
Yeah,
All
that's
of us
okay.
are going to Cape Cod Village because it was so successful.
So are there any other questions regarding this article on the autism program? Okay. Are there any other questions regarding just CPA in general before we move along? Nope, okay. All righty. You see, new business, is there any new business?
not really new business, but I might as well add, I was thinking about the schedule.
Oh, yes,
So the schools hopefully will come through on the 13th.
right,
That means March 6th is open. And March 17th is the hearing. And March 20th is open. That's your Thursday. We have Paul, I think, scheduled for next week. March 6th.
for zoning.
For all the zoning stuff.
Okay, that was a question that I have. I mean, that's what I put down for next week.
Right.
That was my recommendation.
So that will clear, there are other articles,
Yeah,
but they're relatively benign, I think straightforward. Except for maybe Article 4, you might have a little bit of discussion on, but the zoning is the biggest piece left to the warrant, right? So,
so we'll plan on zoning for our meeting on March 6th.
Okay.
Okay,
and then maybe depending on how the schools go, maybe we can knock out a couple there. Then you'll have the budget hearing. And I think we could wrap up on the March 20th date.
When is the
Okay.
budget hearing?
March 17th is the scheduled date. It's a Monday with the select board.
mhm.
Okay. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Now, I have a question while we're talking about all this. It's my understanding that there is going to be a petition regarding the fertilizer.
Maybe we'll be talking about it on Monday.
Oh, okay,
There's been an article submitted that they would like to be sponsored by the select board, but the select board has to talk about that. And if that's not the case, then maybe it may be withdrawn.
okay, so if it's not withdrawn, we would have to add that to our
Yeah, we'd catch it at that.
agenda in some fashion.
Yeah.
And I have another question on the this was discussed the other day at select board meeting, the transfer fee. Is that going to be a warrant article?
Yep, I just drafted it today. It'll be in their packet tomorrow as a suggested first stab at some language.
Mm-hmm.
And that's on the list for the warrant list, yeah.
Okay, so is that's something that we should have on our agenda at some point too?
Mhm.
Okay. So I just want to, so we're talking about March 6th for zoning, and that would be with Paul.
Mm-hmm.
March 13th for the schools,
Mm-hmm.
all three. March 17th for a budget hearing, and that's with the select board.
Yep.
Is that at 5:30?
Yes.
Yes. Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
The others that I've just mentioned, the 3/6 date and the 3/13 date are 4:00. So where would we put the, if there are, and we know the transfer fee is one, the fertilizer one,
Yeah, March 20th.
March 20th?
And depending how much progress you make, maybe that could be where you do your votes. If everybody wants a little bit of time to think about it, we could probably have a relatively short meeting on the 27th.
So we're saying on March 20th, the petitions, the transfer fee, the fertilizer, potentially. And let me see, is that March? I don't have a calendar in front of me. Is all of these days are Thursdays?
Yes.
That's,
So then the 27th would be the warrant votes. Is that what you're?
For the 20th.
Yeah.
So
If needed.
the 27th will be warrant votes.
it sounded like Rich said that we could actually tackle the warrant votes on the, potentially the 20th.
Mhm.
Now we'll set up the agendas to have it there. And if you want to do it, do it. And if not, then you could just,
Okay,
We'll see how it goes, and if it works for the 20th of March, that's fine. If not, we'll keep the 27th open to do the votes for the 27th.
and Mary, I don't think you'll need it, but April 3rd is a Thursday, which will be the day before that we have to send everything out. So we have one more bite at the apple if really, really need it. But I think that we're planning on sending out the warrant by April 4th at the
Mhm.
latest.
And I know last year there was a meeting before the warrant open to the public for questions, et cetera. Is that
Pre-town meeting?
pre-town meeting? Yeah.
Yep. I think we'll be talking about that.
Oh,
and
okay.
getting that
But, no
scheduled.
date has been established for that.
No, I think typically we do that with a select board meeting.
Okay.
So I think that's probably what we'll be discussing a little bit on Mondays. Where do they want to fit that in? I know there's some conflicts with some folks. Maybe we'll just deal with the conflicts, or maybe we'll have a different date altogether. I don't know, but
Okay, so I'm just going to go over this again. So right now we have a meeting next week, March 6th, on zoning with Paul Lag, and that is at 4:00. We have the next meeting on March 13th, and that will be regarding the three schools, Nauset Regional, Tech, and the elementary school. And again, that's going to be at 4:00. On the 17th, there's going to be a meeting, a budget meeting with the select board. And that will be at 5:30. On the 20th of March, there's going to be the petitions, potentially, not sure yet, on the fertilizer and the transfer fee.
yeah. So I just say all other articles. So there's a petition for fertilizer. There's a petition for an independent study of some sort related to the RTE.
Mhm.
There'll be likely select board sponsored articles would be the transfer fee and adoption of what's called the prudent investor rule. And and another big one will be eminent domain taking of I forget the address, but the Del Gizzi property down across from Salt Pond.
So those will be scheduled for the 20th of March.
Yes,
And that's our meeting at 4:00.
yes.
And then if needed, on March 27th, we'll have the warrant votes. If we don't do it on March 20th. And anything left over would be on April 3rd. And the March 27th is at 4. And April 3rd is at 4.
I'm really hoping everything left over would be handled by March 27th.
Yeah.
You guys get a break for the following month. And Paul can get to work on that town meeting letter, town warrant letter.
Oh, yeah.
Not only that, the select board would like to see the finance committee input, and April 3rd, we would never see it. So we have to be done before that.
Okay.
So we'd like, please, try, make the 27th the last one.
As far
To-
as the
To help the
warrant
select
votes,
board on the warrants, because we do
Yeah.
like to see the
Yeah.
finance committee vote on that. You may not think so, but we do.
Are you trying to say you care a little bit about us?
Just a little bit, Mary, just a little bit.
And remember that the definition of a suggestion is subtle command.
Okay, does anybody have any questions on what we've just been discussing as far as scheduling for going forward? Yeah. Okay. Let me see. So old business. I don't know if anybody has any.
No updates.
uh,
But I
any-
guess back to the new business for a second, Mary.
Oh, sure.
So we don't leave this to last minute. I saw Paul about to chime in there, I think. Do you want to talk about the warrant letter from the finance committee and getting that started?
Yep.
I could work with whomever wants to take it up on the committee side.
And whatever the deadline is, Rich.
Well, if the warrant is being sent out for printing on April 4th, then we need the letter by April 3rd.
Okay, but then I need the folks here to sign off on it and all that. So, okay, got it.
Thanks for reminding us, Rich, and thank you, Paul. Okay. So that will have to be on the agenda at some point to discuss too. Yeah. Alrighty. I'm down to item 5 on the agenda, old business. And capital project committee update. I don't believe, I know you passed something out a while back. Are there any questions on the high school project? That's it in particular. Anything on the school facility, so that that was going out for RFP, right?
There's nothing.
We don't have any update on that. And there's
But
no.
yeah, the
Jerry?
Wellfleet voted to join the 3 towns in that study. The
very good.
Provincetown Independent showed that the Wellfleet joined.
Oh, okay. So that's Brewster, Orleans, Eastham, and Wellfleet, 4 towns? Because originally it was only 3, right?
That's correct. So we have
Yep.
all 4 of the
All
Nauset
4,
regional
that's very
towns
good.
are
Yeah.
on.
Very good, okay. But you still, you haven't met yet. On the update, the regional agreement, you haven't.
We haven't met on the regional agreement.
Right.
Correct. This is, that study is different. That's at
The study is for the
$150,000.
facility study.
Right.
Okay. Are there any other comments, questions, et cetera, under item number 5, old business? And number 6, town manager report. I asked Jackie she was going to send me her last town manager report, but I haven't seen it yet, so.
Okay.
The one that was scheduled, I think she put it in the for last Monday. Do you have anything to comment on under?
I think we've talked about most of the big things
Mhm.
throughout all this, so
Yeah,
nothing further.
Yeah, okay. Alrighty, I am actually down to item number 7. We can adjourn. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Ron,
Ron is making a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second to adjourn?
Second.
Roy? All in favor of